The voicemail icon blinked red on my phone screen. I already knew what it would say before I pressed play. Dr. Marcus Train's voice crackled through the speaker, cold and businesslike. Leila, effective immediately. Your employment with Genesis Biotech is terminated. Please don't come in tomorrow. Expect a call from HR about your final paperwork. That was it. 2 years of my life dismissed in 30 seconds. I sat in my apartment kitchen, staring at the phone. Any normal person would be devastated, shocked, angry. But I wasn't any of those things. I was ready. You see, I'd been expecting this call for months, ever since I discovered what Marcus really planned to do with my technology. The bioengineering system I'd spent 2 years perfecting wasn't going to help sick children or cure genetic diseases. It was going to the highest bidder, criminals who wanted to build perfect soldiers and designer babies for the wealthy elite. I deleted the voicemail and smiled. Marcus thought he'd won by firing me 6 months before the project's completion. He thought he could steal my work and keep the $35 million promised to me. He had no idea what I'd already done. 3 days later, I marched into Genesis Biotech's glass tower for the last time. The security guard looked uncomfortable as he escorted me to Marcus's office. Everyone knew I'd been fired, but they also knew I was the genius behind Project Genesis. Marcus sat behind his massive oak desk, looking smug. His gray suit was perfectly pressed, his smile perfectly fake. Leila, so good of you to come in. We need to discuss your final payment. I crossed my arms. $35 million. That was our agreement. He laughed. Actually laughed. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. Since you didn't complete the project, we can only offer $50,000. Take it or leave it. The contract sat on his desk. I'd read every word 100 times. It clearly stated I'd receive full payment upon project completion, but Marcus was gambling that I wouldn't fight him in court for years. The project isn't finished, I said calmly. Close enough. My team can handle the final details. His team. 3 junior engineers who couldn't debug a simple software glitch without my help. I stood up, smoothing my jeans. We'll see about that. 1 week before that voicemail, I'd been working late in my lab. The Genesis system hummed quietly in the corner, a sleek black tower that looked like an expensive gaming computer but contained the most advanced genetic editing technology on Earth. Paul, my lab assistant, had gone home hours ago. The building was empty except for security guards. Perfect. I opened the system's motherboard with my custom tools. Deep inside, nestled between memory chips and circuit boards, I found what I was looking for. A tiny connector, no bigger than a grain of rice. My hands didn't shake as I attached the microscopic device I'd built. It looked like part of the original hardware. Even if someone suspected sabotage, they'd never find it without knowing exactly where to look. The device was simple, but deadly. When activated, it would send a pulse through the system's main processor, creating an infinite loop that would crash everything. The system would display an error message, then shut down completely. I closed the motherboard and powered the system back up. Everything worked perfectly, for now. The kill switch was armed, only I knew how to disarm it. Demo day arrived with all the fanfare Marcus could muster. I wasn't there, of course. I'd been fired. But I'd left myself a little present months ago. A tiny camera hidden in the demo room's ventilation grate, connected to my laptop through an encrypted signal. I sat in my apartment, watching the show unfold on my computer screen. Marcus wore his best suit and biggest smile. The buyers sat at the conference table like sharks in expensive clothing. The Mendoza family from Mexico. I'd researched them thoroughly. They weren't just wealthy. They were dangerous. Drug money, human trafficking, and now they wanted to add genetic engineering to their empire. Gentlemen, prepare to witness the future, Marcus announced, his voice booming with confidence. The Genesis system sat center stage, its black surface gleaming under the conference room lights. Marcus approached the main terminal and entered his access codes. His fingers danced across the keyboard with practiced precision. Then he hit the activation button. The screen flickered. An error message appeared in bold red letters. Critical error, code 000, system locked. Marcus's smile faltered. He tried again, same message. Through my hidden camera, I watched his face drain of color. The Mendoza family didn't look amused. The oldest brother, Carlos, leaned back in his leather chair, his dark eyes never leaving Marcus's face. His younger brother Diego drummed his fingers on the table, a habit I'd noticed meant he was getting impatient. "What seems to be the problem, Dr. Train?" Carlos asked, his voice deceptively calm. Marcus's hands flew over the keyboard, trying different access codes, different startup sequences. Nothing worked. The system remained locked, that red error message mocking him from the screen. "It's just a minor glitch," Marcus stammered. "These things happen with complex technology. Give me a few minutes to—" "We gave you 2 years and $10 million, Diego interrupted. "We didn't come here for glitches." Through my camera feed, I watched Marcus sweat through his expensive shirt. He was supposed to be demonstrating how the Genesis system could modify human genetics, enhance intelligence, alter physical appearance, even choose a baby's eye color before birth. Instead, he was staring at an error message he couldn't fix. "I'll have my team look at this immediately," Marcus said. "We'll have it running by tomorrow." Carlos stood up slowly. When he spoke, ice filled his voice. "You have 10 days, Dr. Train. Fix it, or return our money." After the Mendoza family left, Marcus went into full panic mode. I watched through security cameras as he called every engineer he knew. Top programmers from Silicon Valley, hardware specialists from Japan, software debuggers from Germany. They came in waves over the next few days, each one promising to solve the mystery, each one failing spectacularly. The Genesis system wasn't broken, it was perfectly functional. The kill switch I'd installed simply prevented the main program from loading. To anyone looking at the error logs, it appeared to be a random hardware failure. But the hardware was fine. The software was fine. The connection between them was what I'd severed. Dr. Jennifer Walsh from MIT spent 3 days convinced it was a memory issue. She replaced every RAM module twice. The error persisted. David Chen, a hardware genius from Beijing, was certain the processor had failed. He swapped it with a backup. Still nothing. Marcus grew more desperate by the hour. He offered double fees, triple fees. He promised partnerships and future projects, but you can't fix what isn't broken, and you can't find what's hidden in plain sight. On day 7, he finally swallowed his pride and started trying to contact me. My phone buzzed constantly. Text messages, voicemails, emails. Marcus was relentless. I ignored them all, watching his desperation grow from my laptop screen. The messages started professional. "Leila, we need to discuss the technical difficulties with Genesis. Please call me back." Then they became urgent. "Leila, this is extremely important. The buyers are threatening legal action. We need your expertise." Finally, they turned desperate. "Please, Leila, I know we had our differences, but lives could be at stake here. Call me back." Lives at stake. That was rich, coming from the man who wanted to sell genetic weapons to criminals. Paul called too. My former lab assistant's voice was nervous when he left his first message. "Hey Leila, just checking in. How are you holding up? Maybe we could grab coffee sometime." I almost felt sorry for Paul. He was a good kid, brilliant in his own right, just naive about Marcus's true nature. But sympathy wouldn't stop me from protecting my work. On day 8, Marcus sent a formal email with a subject line in all caps. "Urgent, Genesis project, immediate consultation required." I finally decided to respond. Not because of his threats or his begging, but because it was time for the next phase of my plan. I suggested we meet at Café Luna, a busy coffee shop downtown. Neutral ground, lots of witnesses, and excellent security cameras. If Marcus was planning anything desperate, he'd have to think twice. He was already there when I arrived, hunched over a corner table with 3 empty espresso cups in front of him. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his designer shirt wrinkled. The man who'd fired me a week ago looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Leila, thank God you came." He jumped up as I approached, nearly knocking over his chair. "We need to talk." I sat down slowly, ordering a simple black coffee from the nervous waitress. "I'm listening." "The Genesis system is locked. Every expert I've consulted says it's impossible to fix without completely rebuilding from scratch, but that would take years, and I don't have years." His voice cracked slightly. "I don't even have days." "Sounds like a problem," I said, stirring my coffee. "You built the system. You know it better than anyone. If there's a way to unlock it, you're the only one who can find it." I leaned back in my chair, studying his face. Fear, desperation, and something else. Guilt, maybe? "Why should I help you, Marcus? You fired me. You tried to cheat me out of $35 million. Marcus leaned forward desperately. I'll give you the full payment, $35 million, just like we agreed. Plus a bonus, $50 million total. Just please fix the system. $50 million, life-changing money for most people. But money wasn't what I wanted anymore. Tell me about your buyers, I said quietly. His face went pale. What buyers? The Mendoza family. What do they want with Genesis? I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo I'd taken through my hidden camera. Carlos Mendoza shaking hands with Marcus. Don't lie to me. Marcus slumped in his chair, the fight going out of him. They want to enhance their soldiers, create perfect assassins immune to certain drugs, stronger and faster than normal humans. And they want to offer genetic modifications to wealthy clients, designer babies for people with too much money. Exactly what I thought. I stood up, leaving my coffee unfinished. I will never allow my technology to be used by criminals, Marcus. Never. But the money. Keep your blood money. I headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Marcus, you have 2 days left. The color drained from his face as I walked away. That evening, Paul showed up at my apartment. I lived in a quiet complex on the edge of town, the kind of place where neighbors minded their own business. Through my peephole, I could see him shifting nervously from foot to foot. Leila, it's Paul, can we talk? I opened the door, curious about what he wanted. Paul had always been different from the other Genesis employees, genuinely interested in the science, not just the paycheck. Hey, Paul, come in. I led him to my small living room, offering him a seat on my couch. I heard about the system lockdown, he said, not meeting my eyes. Marcus is going crazy. He's hired security guards for the lab, convinced someone's trying to sabotage the project. Interesting theory, I said carefully. Look, I know you and Marcus had problems, but this technology could really help people. Kids with genetic diseases, families dealing with inherited conditions. His voice was earnest, passionate. Maybe there's a way to protect it from falling into the wrong hands. I studied his face. Paul had worked on Genesis for 18 months, but he'd been kept away from the core programming, my programming. He knew the system was locked, but not how or why. What do you think I should do? I asked. Paul leaned forward, his eyes bright with an idea that clearly excited him. What if you could modify the system somehow? Remove the dangerous capabilities, but keep the medical applications. I nodded thoughtfully. That's actually brilliant, Paul. The core technology could be reprogrammed to only target disease-causing genes, not enhancement modifications. Exactly. You could be a hero, Leila. Save the technology and save lives. We talked for another hour about the possibilities. Paul's enthusiasm was infectious, and I found myself genuinely considering his proposal. Maybe there was a way to turn this disaster into something positive. When he got up to leave, I walked him to the door. Thanks for coming by, Paul. You've given me a lot to think about. I hope I've helped, he said, then hesitated. Leila, if you do decide to fix the system, please be careful. Marcus is desperate, and desperate people do dangerous things. After he left, I sat in my living room, thinking. Paul was right about the technology's potential for good. But he was also naive about Marcus's true intentions. The man would never allow Genesis to be used only for medical purposes. There wasn't enough money in helping sick children. I made myself some tea and settled down to review my options. On my coffee table sat my leather-bound journal, filled with 2 years of notes, calculations, and observations about the Genesis project. I woke up to my apartment alarm blaring at 3 in the morning. Someone had broken in. My heart pounded as I grabbed the baseball bat I kept beside my bed and crept toward the living room. The front door was still locked, but my desk drawer hung open. Papers were scattered across the floor. Then I noticed what was missing, my project journal. I checked every room, every hiding place. Nothing else had been taken. Not my laptop, not my expensive lab equipment, not even the cash I kept in my bedroom safe. Just the journal. My hands shook as I called the police, but I already knew they wouldn't find anything useful. Whoever had done this was a professional. No fingerprints, no footprints, no sign of forced entry. The journal contained 2 years of handwritten notes about Genesis. Most of it was technical calculations and programming notes that would mean nothing to an outsider. But on page 47, I'd written something that made my blood run cold to remember. A single line, written during a late-night debugging session 6 months ago. Motherboard connector J47 critical. Remove pulse device before system activation. I documented the kill switch location without thinking, and now someone had that information. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Package delivered as promised. Payment due upon confirmation. The next morning, I made 2 important phone calls. The first was to Agent Rosa Keene at the FBI's bioethics division. I'd contacted her months ago when I first discovered Marcus's real plans for Genesis. Agent Keene, this is Leila Carver. I think it's time to move forward with our discussion. Are you ready to provide evidence? Her voice was crisp and professional. The sale is happening soon, maybe tomorrow. I can give you location, time, and proof of the criminal conspiracy. We'll need recordings, documents, anything that proves illegal intent. I have everything, but once this goes down, there's no going back. My second call was to Marcus. He answered on the first ring, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. Leila, thank God. Please tell me you're calling to help. I'll fix your system, I said calmly. But I have conditions. First, you pay me the full $35 million up front. Second, I maintain partial ownership of the Genesis patent. Third, I get to oversee how the technology is used going forward. Done, done, and done. When can you start? Give me until tomorrow morning. Have your buyers there at 10 a.m. for the final demonstration. You're saving my life, Leila. I won't forget this. I hung up, knowing he was about to have the worst day of his life. That afternoon, I drove to Genesis Biotech one last time. Marcus had given me full access to the lab, desperate to see his precious system working again. The building buzzed with activity, technicians preparing for tomorrow's demonstration, security guards patrolling the halls, executives making frantic phone calls. I made my way to the lab where Genesis waited. The black tower hummed quietly, still displaying its red error message. In 18 hours, this room would be full of FBI agents instead of criminals. I opened the system's motherboard and located the tiny device I'd hidden weeks ago. With careful precision, I removed it and pocketed the kill switch. Now Genesis would function perfectly, for exactly as long as I needed it to. Next, I accessed the system's programming interface and made several crucial modifications. To anyone watching, it would look like I was simply debugging the software. In reality, I was installing something much more important. A recording protocol. Starting tomorrow at 9:55 a.m., Genesis would begin documenting everything. Every command entered, every conversation in the room, every financial transaction processed through its interface. The evidence would be irrefutable. I saved my changes and closed the system. Tomorrow, Marcus would get his demonstration. The Mendoza family would see Genesis working perfectly, and the FBI would have everything they needed to shut down the entire operation. Agent Keene called me at sunrise. We're in position, 3 teams surrounding the building, plus agents inside posing as maintenance workers. Are you certain about the timing? 10 a.m. sharp. Marcus will demonstrate the system's genetic modification capabilities, then process the final payment from the buyers. And you're sure the system will record everything? I smiled, watching the Genesis Biotech tower through my apartment window. Trust me, it'll capture every illegal word. At 9:30, I received a text from Marcus. System working perfectly. You're a genius, Leila. Everything will be forgiven after today. If only he knew. The second text came from the unknown number that had contacted me about my stolen journal. D-Train confirms payment ready. Transfer initiated. D-Train? I realized with a shock that someone else was involved, someone with the same last name as Marcus. A family member, perhaps. His brother David, the lawyer who'd helped draft my original contract. The web of conspiracy was bigger than I'd imagined. But it was too late for them to change course now. At 9:55, I opened my laptop and accessed the hidden camera feed. The demonstration was about to begin, and I had the best seat in the house. This time, I wasn't just watching for entertainment. I was watching for justice. The Genesis lab looked like a corporate boardroom crossed with a high-tech movie set. Marcus stood beside the system, wearing his most expensive suit and his most confident smile. The Mendoza brothers sat at a polished conference table, flanked by 2 men I didn't recognize. Bodyguards, probably. Gentlemen, thank you for your patience, Marcus began. Today you'll see that Genesis is not just functional, but revolutionary. Carlos Mendoza checked his platinum watch. We've invested considerable time and money in this project, Dr. Train. It had better be worth it. Marcus activated the main interface. This time, no error message appeared. The system hummed to life, its screens displaying the genetic modification protocols I'd spent 2 years perfecting. Genesis can modify human embryonic DNA with 99.7% accuracy, Marcus explained, pulling up demonstration files. Enhanced strength, increased intelligence, disease immunity, all available to your clients for the right price. Diego leaned forward. Show us combat modifications. Marcus's fingers danced across the keyboard. The screen displayed genetic sequences for enhanced muscle development, accelerated reflexes, and pain tolerance modifications. Everything a criminal organization would want in their soldiers. Beautiful, Carlos murmured. How quickly can production begin? We can start immediately, Marcus replied, for a final payment of $190 million. Through my camera feed, I watched Carlos nod to one of his associates, who opened a briefcase full of banking documents. The FBI was getting everything they needed. As the Mendoza family reviewed the financial documents, Marcus stepped away from the main terminal. He pulled out his phone and sent a quick text, probably to whoever had been helping him coordinate this sale. That's when I noticed movement in the lab's back corner. Paul emerged from behind a equipment rack, carrying a laptop bag. He wasn't supposed to be there. Marcus had told me the demonstration would be private, just him and the buyers. Paul approached the Genesis terminal and began connecting his laptop to the system's secondary interface. I frowned, zooming in on my camera feed. What was he doing? Then I realized with growing horror that Paul was downloading something from Genesis. Not just the basic operating software, he was copying the core genetic modification protocols. The most dangerous parts of my technology. Marcus noticed Paul and gave him a subtle nod. They were working together. I grabbed my phone and called Agent Keene. Something's wrong. There's an unauthorized download happening. Someone's copying the Genesis files. We see it. Team 3 is moving to intercept. No, wait. Let them finish. If you stop them now, they might destroy the evidence. Let them think they're succeeding. On my screen, Paul's laptop showed a download progress bar. 60% complete. Carlos and Diego were still focused on their paperwork, unaware that the technology was being duplicated without their knowledge. Marcus planned to sell Genesis to the Mendoza family, then keep a copy for himself. Paul's download completed just as Carlos signed the final payment authorization. $190 million was being transferred from a Mexico City bank to Marcus's business account. Money that would fund genetic modifications for criminals and terrorists around the world. Excellent, Carlos said, closing his briefcase. When do we take possession of the system? Our transport team will package Genesis tomorrow, Marcus replied. You'll have full operational capability within 72 hours. That's when Agent Keene gave the signal. The lab doors burst open as FBI agents flooded in from 3 directions. Federal agents, nobody move. Chaos erupted. Diego reached for something inside his jacket, but 2 agents tackled him before he could draw a weapon. Carlos raised his hand slowly, his face a mask of cold fury. Dr. Marcus Train, you're under arrest for conspiracy to distribute illegal bioweapons technology, Agent Keene announced, approaching Marcus with handcuffs. Marcus's face went white. This is a mistake. We're conducting legitimate business. Selling genetic modification technology to known criminals is not legitimate business, Agent Keene replied coldly. As the agents secured the scene, I noticed Paul trying to slip out through a side door, his laptop bag clutched against his chest. 2 agents intercepted him, but he managed to break free and run toward the building's emergency exit. He'd almost made it when a 3rd agent appeared in the stairwell, blocking his escape route. Paul's laptop bag scattered across the floor as agents tackled him. External hard drives and USB sticks spilled everywhere, all containing copies of my Genesis technology. Paul Morrison, you're under arrest for theft of classified biotechnology, an agent announced. I was just following orders, Paul shouted, looking desperately at Marcus. You promised me $500,000. Marcus's face twisted with rage. I never promised you anything, you lying little... Enough, Agent Keene interrupted. Save it for your lawyers. As the agents led Marcus away in handcuffs, he spotted my hidden camera and stared directly into it. For a moment, our eyes met through the digital connection. His expression was a mixture of hatred and grudging respect. "You planned this from the beginning," he said to the camera. "You played me perfectly." Agent Keene followed his gaze and noticed the camera for the first time. She gave me a small nod of acknowledgement before continuing with the arrests. The Mendoza brothers were loaded into separate vehicles, their $190 million investment now frozen by federal asset forfeiture. Carlos maintained his dignified silence, but Diego was cursing in rapid Spanish as they drove him away. Within an hour, the Genesis lab was empty except for FBI technicians carefully documenting every piece of evidence. My 2-year nightmare was finally over. 3 weeks later, I sat in a federal courthouse listening to Marcus's lawyer try to convince a judge that his client was an innocent businessman caught up in circumstances beyond his control. Dr. Train had no knowledge of his buyer's criminal intentions, the defense attorney argued. He believed he was selling medical technology to legitimate pharmaceutical researchers. Agent Keene presented our evidence methodically. The recorded conversations where Marcus explicitly discussed combat modifications. The financial records showing payments from known criminal organizations. The emails between Marcus and Paul detailing their plan to maintain illegal copies of Genesis technology. Most damning of all were Marcus's own words from the demonstration. Enhanced strength, increased intelligence, disease immunity, all available to your clients for the right price. The judge was not impressed by the defense's arguments. "Dr. Train, you developed weapons technology disguised as medical research. You knowingly sold it to criminal organizations. You attempted to defraud your former employee of millions of dollars in promised compensation." Marcus stood as the judge read his sentence. 15 years in federal prison, forfeiture of all assets related to Genesis Biotech, and a permanent ban from biotechnology research. Paul received 5 years for corporate espionage and conspiracy. His $500,000 promise had turned into a $250,000 fine and a ruined career. As for the Mendoza family, Carlos and Diego were extradited to Mexico to face charges there. Their $190 million was redistributed to victims of their previous crimes. After the trial, Agent Keene and federal prosecutors discussed Genesis's future with me. The technology was too dangerous to exist in its current form, but too valuable to destroy completely. "We recommend you maintain control of the patents under federal oversight," Agent Keene explained. "The medical applications could save millions of lives." Over 6 months, I worked with ethical researchers to rebuild Genesis from the ground up. We stripped out every enhancement protocol, every combat modification, every cosmetic alteration option. The new system, renamed HOPE, could only target specific genetic diseases: cystic fibrosis, Huntington's disease, sickle cell anemia, conditions that caused real suffering. I established the Genesis Foundation to oversee HOPE's development. Every treatment would be provided at cost, regardless of ability to pay. No more genetic modifications for the wealthy, while the poor suffered. The Foundation's first patient was 7-year-old Maria, born with a condition that would have killed her before age 10. Hope's treatment gave her normal life expectancy and eliminated her daily pain. When Maria's mother hugged me at the Foundation's opening ceremony, I finally felt my 2 years of work had been worthwhile. 6 months after the trial, Paul visited my new laboratory. Prison had aged him. He looked tired, older than his years. "Leila, could we talk?" We sat in my office while he struggled with his words. "I wanted to apologize. What I did was wrong. You trusted me, and I betrayed that trust for money I never received." "Why did you do it, Paul?" He stared at his hands. "Marcus offered enough money to pay my student loans and buy a house. I convinced myself downloading the files wasn't stealing, just preserving the technology." "You knew he was selling to criminals." "I didn't want to know. I told myself his buyers were legitimate." He looked up with sad eyes. "I chose money over ethics and destroyed my career." "What are you doing now?" "Teaching high school biology. It doesn't pay much, but I'm not hurting anyone." Before he left, I surprised us both. The Genesis Foundation could use a science educator, someone to teach ethics alongside genetics. Paul's ethics classes became popular at the Genesis Foundation. Colleagues who'd condemned him gradually respected his redemption efforts. "I made choices that hurt people," he told students. "Now I spend every day trying to make better choices. That's what ethical science means." The foundation grew steadily. Hope treatments helped hundreds of children with genetic diseases. Pharmaceutical companies offered billions for exclusive licensing rights. I turned them all down. Money had corrupted Genesis from the beginning. Marcus's greed, the Mendoza family's wealth, Paul's financial desperation, all nearly destroyed something that could help people. 5 years later, I received a letter from Marcus in prison. He was eligible for parole and wanted to apologize. The final paragraph seemed genuine. "You were right to stop me, Leila. I lost sight of why we became scientists. I hope hope can accomplish what Genesis never could, helping people instead of hurting them." I kept the letter but never wrote back. Today, the Genesis Foundation operates in 12 countries. Hope has eliminated genetic diseases that once seemed incurable. Children who would have died before age 5 are now healthy teenagers planning for college. I still work long hours, but the stress is different. Instead of wondering if my technology will be misused, I worry whether we're helping enough people fast enough. Last week, Maria sent me a video message. She's 13 now, captain of her soccer team, top of her math class. Her condition is completely controlled by Hope's treatments. "Dr. Carver, thank you for saving my life," she said. "I wouldn't be here without Hope. Someday I want to be a scientist like you and help other kids." Messages like Maria's remind me why I became a biotechnology engineer. Science should serve humanity, not exploit it. Marcus thought he could steal my work and profit from human suffering. But he never understood the most important thing about our technology. Its real power wasn't making people stronger or smarter. The real power was giving hope to families who had lost it. This morning, I'm working on Hope's next generation, treatments for autism and developmental disabilities. The science is complex, but the goal is simple: help children reach their potential. My phone still has Marcus's old voicemail saved. Sometimes I listen to remember how far we've come. "Leila, effective immediately, your employment with Genesis Biotech is terminated." He thought firing me would end my involvement with Genesis. Instead, it forced me to take control of my destiny. The FBI estimates Marcus's Genesis could have generated over $1 billion in illegal profits. Criminal organizations worldwide were ready to pay any price for genetic enhancement technology. Instead, they got prison sentences. Hope generates no profits, but its impact is immeasurable. Thousands of children now have futures they wouldn't have had otherwise. That voicemail was supposed to end my story. Instead, it was just the beginning.